Hey folks, it's Jake here at Canadian Cutting Edge. I've got a fixed blade Friday for you, and that's this knife. I did the unboxing of this knife a few weeks ago. This is a Svord drop point knife. It's the 4 3/8 knife, and they've got this same basic knife, I believe, in 3 main models. There's this one. This is the economy model, and it comes with a economy sheath, and then you can get a mid-grade model which comes with a leather sheath, and then there is a deluxe or premium, I think it's called deluxe, but it is their premium version of the same knife. You get the same basic steel, same size, same basic design, but you get fancier stuff like handles, and you get fancier sheaths, and you get fancier all kinds of stuff. And we're going to be talking about the budgetary version one, because if the edge is pretty much the same because the steel's pretty much the same, that's all you really need to know if Svord knives are any good or not. So stick around for the full review of this guy, and it's coming at you right now. So on Svord's website, this is called the DP, drop point 4 3/8. You get a mahogany blade, and take a look at that wood. For the most budget line knife, you're getting some really, really nice wood. It's got a chatoyance to it. That's that shine that you see here when you turn the wood back and forth. That kind of reflection. That's called the chatoyance of the wood. A lot of wood doesn't have very much of that, and some woods have a lot of it. This is a mahogany. It's sort of got a sort of a medium amount of chatoyance. So you got this wood, and it's one single piece that has been, it got a cut in it along the blade. And so the piece of steel is here, and then the steel comes up, and it has to go along where these pins are. So it comes along here, and I'm assuming it sort of thins out a little bit until it gets to that point. So since it's that long, I'm calling this a full tang knife. It's, you know, you've got 1/2 inch, if you count this extra piece that's sticking out here, of just wood back here. That doesn't really count. Of course, if you're being super technical, it's not a full tang knife, but this is I'm thinking it's a form of a rat tail kind of full-length tang knife. 3 good brass pins here to hold it together. That's a really good thing. And the wood has a water-based varnish on it. You can see that it has a grind that you might not be very familiar with if you're used to folding knives. This is a convex grind, which means the blade edge, like if this is the blade edge, when they sharpened it, it's just sort of rounded over to a point. So you've got your thickness of your steel, and then it comes down to a point. That's actually a very strong way to make a blade, especially an outdoors blade, because you get a lot of strength behind the cutting edge, and yet you can still get a very sharp edge. And that's what this has. And most really good outdoors knives use a convex grind. It's just the industry knows that that's very good, and so that's what most industry do. Now you're looking at the steel and you're going, wow, what's up with that really dark zone there? And then you've got your shiny zone here. Well, they get the blade stock in 2.2 millimeters thick, and all he has to do is cut the shape out and then sharpen it. It's one of the reasons why it's at a budgetary price. And since this is a carbon steel, it's already been sort of oxidized over here. So you got this black patina on the steel there already. And since each one is done, sort of separately, that line where this grind meets the patina is going to be a little bit different on each knife. Some knives are going to have very little of this dark patina area, and other knives are going to have, like this one, a fair bit. And there's nothing wrong with the amount that's here. This is very, very good. A nice budget knife. It's a drop point, so it's rounded down to a tip. It doesn't have a really sharp point on it. It's sort of got a rounded point. I did dull the point a little bit more than it needed to be. I got distracted when I was working on my work sharp. My dog came by and I looked at him and, you know, you shouldn't allow yourself to get distracted when you're sharpening stuff. I did. And so I ended up dulling the tip just a little bit. Not a big deal. I can bring that tip back if I want to, no problem. So we got a nice sharp edge. Let's talk briefly. Oh, I added this little bit of a lanyard to it. It doesn't come this way. And that's because of the way that it works with the sheath. It's got one of these sheaths where the knife sits all the way down in it. And then you have just a little bit of the knife sticking out. And so I like having just a tiny bit of something to help grab to pull it out when you've got one of these deep hanging sheaths. Knives, yeah, in the sheath. So what's the sheath made of? Well, this is a PVC material. It's actually made of a conveyor belt kind of material that, you know, they've used to cut into this shape to put together. You've got brass pins. They're painted black, but brass pins to hold it together. So that's a really good thing. And then you've got this kind of PVC material here, and it's just a loop that's open, hollow all the way through. And that's so that you can put in a sharpening rod. That's what they intend it for. But what I think I would use it for is I would use it to put on a ferrule rod. And, you know, just put it in there and store it that way. But you want it to have a way to stay in there, kind of like we have on this knife here. So this knife has got a ferrocerium rod, and it's got a holder for it. And so the way it goes on is you put the rod in the hole, and this is that stretch cord, and you put it over, shock cord, and you put it over the end, and it holds on, and it's not coming off. Like you can pull on it, and it's just not coming off. So if I wanted to do that with this, I'd either have to get a much longer piece of ferrocerium rod because you have to go past the end, or I could always, you know, since it goes up to there, I could cut the material short and just cut this bit off, and then I could put the shock cord around underneath and it would hold it on. But to be honest with you, what I would really do is I would do it down here, and I would cut this top section off so that it would sit down like that instead of sitting up higher than the edge. So that's an option, which I may or may not do. I don't know. I might end up seeing if I can get one of those sharpening rods that Svord makes. And hopefully I found some places that have them. I'll put links down below in the description. This knife, though, I think that's enough talking about the sheath. It's really durable, super durable sheath. And although it's kind of uncommon to see something made this way, but, you know, this is a workman's sheath. It's just going to last and last and last. So there's nothing about this knife that, you know, draws attention to itself for the sake of drawing attention to itself. It's a knife that's designed to work hard. It's not pretentious. It, you know, it just is ready to get to work. And that's good. I like that. That's a good thing. And it does what it says it's going to do. This knife, like I said, comes in upper grades of it. The next level up is much more easy to find in stores. I looked all over stores and I just couldn't find this one, the DP, the economy version. It's just really hard to find in stores. If I find any, I'll put them in the links below in the description area. That's just above the comments below the video. But the next version up is relatively easy to find, and it's around $50 US. And it's got a little bit nicer handle on it. Basically the same blade, nicer handle, and it comes with a leather sheath for around $50 US. So if you really like this review and you like this video and you think you want to get one of these, $50 is not bad at all for, you know, an upgrade from this. So hopefully this can be found for, you know, $35, $40. I don't know. It's just I haven't been able to really find it around. That being said, Svord, Brian at Svord, Brian Baker, he's the guy who founded and owns and runs Svord Knives in New Zealand. He's, I don't know, I think 3 or 4 years older than I am. He opened this business back in, what did he say, 83, when he was 18 years old. So he's maybe 5 or 6 years older than me. Well, who cares? And so he's been running this business all those years, and he's been making these knives very, very well. And I contacted him, and he sent me a peasant knife, the friction joint knife. We'll be doing a review of that soon. This knife and a larger, big 11-inch Bowie. So we'll be looking at those in the future as well. For now, let's test this thing, or I've tested it for a while. I'm surprised I didn't get it all scratched up. There's a few scratches here and there. This is 15N20 steel, which is a carbon steel. This is a steel that's often used for blades, for saw blades, bandsaw blades. If they use it for saws, you know that it keeps an edge quite well. Otherwise, what's the sense in having a saw blade that gets dull all the time, right? Let's do a little bit of a demonstration with this. So I've got some of this knife. This is manila rope, and it just zips through it very, very easy. I've had a lot of knives that I had a much tougher time cutting through than this. And then a little bit thicker than that, we've got this rope. This is a sisal rope. And, got through that quite easily, not too hard at all. And sisal rope is quite challenging very often. So that works quite well. And yet, even after doing that, and I cut it right in that area there, and these ropes are quite rough on steel. Oh, I don't want to cut out my notes. It still cuts quite well. I should have gotten a different piece of paper, but it still cuts very well. Good and sharp, cuts quite well. Let's show you cutting into a little bit of wood. My wife doesn't like too much of a mess in the house, and it's still like -20 out here. That's like -4 Fahrenheit. It's still nasty weather, middle of winter, and this is early March, so it's a nasty year this year. Okay, so I've got some pine here, and this pine is just super easy to cut. That's cutting against the grain, or I can cut with the grain. Now that I've cleaned it up, you can see that you can make some really nice pieces of wood. You can do really controlled cuts. It works very, very well. And, the steel, stays sharp for a very long time. And the edge, on the wood, it just feels smooth to the touch, except for where I broke it right there, but I broke the wood, not the knife. And so that's a sign that you've got a really good steel. It doesn't have to be super thick. Now, one thing that you're going to want to not do very much of, North Americans with outdoor knives seem to be addicted to batoning. This is not a knife that's designed for batoning. But you can do some minor batoning if you want to. I would just suggest that, if you got a big piece of wood, instead of batoning through a whole bunch of it, just take off a little corner. Just take off a little piece. Because why are you batoning? The purpose of batoning generally is to break down wood so you can build a fire. So instead of trying to split it in half, why wouldn't you just take off a little piece so that you can get a whole bunch of little pieces to start a fire? That's my way of thinking. That way you maintain your edge a whole lot longer. It wears out much more slowly. You have a much lower risk of damaging your knife. Even if the risk is super low, it's still lower if you just use it the minimum amount that you possibly can. It's less sharpening. The less times you have to sharpen your knife, the longer it lasts, because you have to take off steel whenever you sharpen it. There's just 1,001 reasons why batoning, through the middle of something is not super smart. So that's what I suggest. If you're going to baton, just baton off some small pieces, and you don't even really need to baton with this wood. You can just sort of rock it. And then I can break off a piece like that. There it goes. So that's a nice long piece. And so that maintains your edge very, very well. And so that's what I mean by batoning with, what's the word I'm looking for? Batoning with good sense. Good knife. It works well. It looks well. And believe it or not, it carries well. So the way this carries is your belt goes through here, like this. So if my finger is the belt, and then it hangs on your pants, and I carried it in public, this knife in public on my belt for 4 days, like this. Nobody said a word to me, nobody, anything. But then again, I do live in a rural area, in a small town. Well, the town's about 8,000 people. And honestly, I think a lot of people didn't even notice, and the few that did, didn't care. So let's go over all the specs here before I forget to cover that stuff. Drop point blade with a cutting edge of 10.8 centimeters. That's 4.26 inches. The blade length, so the wood to the tip, 11.33 centimeters, 4.46 inches. The steel thickness, 2.2 millimeters, that's 0.0865 inches. The blade depth, measured right here at the base by the handle, is 3.17 centimeters, that's 1.25, 1.25 inches deep. The thickness of the edge behind the grind, well, that's not fair. On a convex grind, you can't measure it the same way that you do if you've got a V grind. Let's do the handle now. Handle length, 13.3 centimeters, 5.24 inches. The handle thickness is 1.55 centimeters. That's 0.61 inches. And the handle depth, I measured it right here before that, between the second and third pins there at this widest spot, 2.8 centimeters, 1.1 inches. The grip area, so that's between there and there, is 10.8 centimeters, 4.25 inches again. Total length of this knife, from tip to the heel right there, 24.6 centimeters, that's 9.69 inches, so almost 9.75 inches. How much does this thing weigh? That's one of the best things about this knife. 103 grams, 3.65 ounces. So just over 3.5 ounces for this knife. Not bad. When you add in the sheath, then it is 223 grams, 7.9 ounces. Not bad at all. Now, where can you get these knives? Oh, I checked in so many places. I'll put down some links. So what are the special features about this? What's the best thing about it? Well, you're getting an economy knife built very well at an economy price. This is a knife that's built for use, for working hard. It does look great, especially the chatoyance on that mahogany. They could have used a cheaper wood, but, they just didn't cut any corners. I really like this knife. Everything on this knife is designed to work, and it does. It works. And that's what I'm calling this knife. A knife that's designed to work, which it does. So there you go. This is a good knife. What are the cons for this knife? I've only got one con for this knife. And it's not even with the knife, really. It's, I think, something that North Americans might want. If you could get this in a 3mm or 3.5, 3.2 millimeter thick steel, I think the North American audience would buy this a little more quickly. I think North Americans have become addicted with wanting thick tangs. They want steel blades that are chunky. Right or wrong, that's what they want. So I think they're wrong. I think a steel that's nice and thin like this, 2.2 millimeters, isn't super thin. This is plenty strong enough to do all the work that it needs to do. It doesn't have any extra that it doesn't need, whereas the really thick blades have a lot of extra weight. They don't have any need for a lot of that thickness. They've got more strength than they need to be a good knife. 2.2 millimeters saves you weight, and that makes for ease of use. And it takes a great edge and holds a great edge for quite a while, and it just works hard. So I like it. So it's just sort of a theoretical con from the perspective of what I think the shoppers might want in North America. So thanks for watching. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, all the good stuff you do. Thank you especially to my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Remember, friends, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb.